Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Friday. Hope you have a great weekend planned for yourselves, and it is Tom McFarlane Day, so we're looking at the next issue of Spawn. That is Spawn number 3, cover dated August 1992. Now, I know what you're saying. Last week we looked at Spawn number 1. Where's Spawn number 2? Just let me tell you that when I started this channel, actually, the first couple of weeks, I was reviewing comics that inspired me to collect more comics and eventually start making my own comics. And Spawn number 2 is one of those issues. So it was actually one of the first reviews I did in those first couple of weeks. So if you are interested and, maybe before watching this one, going to see in the archives and checking out Spawn number 2, my review early on in the channel, don't judge it too harshly, please. But it is there. And if not, then today, as I said, we are here with Spawn number 3. Starting with the cover. I really see on this cover the kind of Dracula reference Spawn kind of evokes, right? Obviously the bats and stuff, so it's very vampire-y, the red cape and stuff. So definitely using a lot of that iconography here. And what will become kind of tropes for Spawn himself, which is, top of the building, the church, and the bats and stuff, kind of will become very much associated with him. I kind of like this cover because it's one of the rare Spawn covers that has some fairly light colors, and it's almost like it's either at sunrise or sunset that this is happening. And I think it looks really good because it helps to contrast Spawn and the dark Spawn figure against that set of lighter colors that we're getting, like the sun's kind of poking through back here. So great cover for McFarlane. He's generally, rarely are his covers crap, especially on Spawn. I think that there's a way he's got about going, the way he goes about making these covers that makes them iconic. And of course he's not cheaping anyone on the cape. This origami, sometimes I wonder if the kind of dark negative shape that he's got is what he starts with, and then he kind of, there's all these, I can kind of deconstruct how he does it, but he's just so masterful at it. It's hard to replicate as well as how he does it. All right, enough about the cover. Let's have a look inside. Image Comics presents Questions, Part 3. Well, yeah, that would make sense because we don't know much about Spawn yet. Story, pencils and inks, Tom McFarlane. Letters, Tom Orzechowski. Editor, colors, Steve Oliff, and Ruben Rudin, all the optics. Dedicated to Jerry the Joker Robinson. So Jerry Robinson, if you don't know, helped design a lot of early kind of Batman characters. He actually, with people within the know in the comic industry, is really the creator of the Joker, not Bob Kane. Bob Kane had a great contract for his creation of Batman. I don't want to get too much into it because we're talking about Spawn, but look into Bob Kane, his creation of Batman. You'll learn a lot of interesting things if you dig deep enough. So let's move on with the actual story. So we get a splash page of Spawn here with an insert frame within the bleed, which I think is cool and very Image-like. Again, one of the things Image did straight away is burst out around the kind of bleed panel, and where traditionally most Marvel DC comics didn't have art, and I've talked about it with Dale Keown, pushed for that full bleed art, which I think gives it an extra level of for some reason, when you do full bleed art, not on every page, but that it's included, I don't know, it adds an extra bit of gravitas, an extra bit of importance to it. I don't know how else to explain it. Spawn here, the one kind of weird design choice still early on, McFarlane's going to refine the look of Spawn, is the nose. Eventually he's going to lose it a little bit slowly over time, and then when his new look is introduced in somewhere around 50, in the 50s, I remember it being kind of anticlimactic in the fact that, well, okay, so his face just looks a little gorier and grittier, but he already had no nose, and no nose was kind of the thing they were pushing, and his nose had disappeared a while back. But in these early issues, still got the nose. I know it's a weird detail, but... So he's figured out his wife's name, and some of the details are coming back to him, so he can start acting upon that and finding out where she is. And that's kind of what we're getting here. A lot of Spawn monologue. Tom McFarlane, notorious for putting a lot of text on a page. I don't know if that's like he was into Chris Claremont or something. I guess it's similar in that sense. Did I ever copy this Spawn drawing right here? This issue specifically holds a few Spawn drawings that I copied over and over again. Not that I would do multiple versions. I say over and over again. I'd find a cool pose, I would copy it and draw it, and then I'd find another cool pose, draw that, right? So there's a bunch in this issue, and I'll point them out, but this is definitely one of them. Just a great shot. I remember, I could probably draw this drawing almost from memory. At least parts of it. Maybe not the cape. So we get a little bit more of the Malabulge. The bad bulge. Is that what Malabulge means? I'm not quite sure. That's how I like to interpret it. I think his name means bad bulge because he's never got one. He's just got kind of a, eternal belly kind of going under there. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the devil's genitalia. Not that I should be asking questions, maybe. This piece of art here, I never saw anywhere else, and I always thought looked really cool, and I would have liked to see it maybe a little bit bigger. Does anyone know where I could find this somewhere else? This is the moment again where, like, I'm pretty sure Liefeld's still inking himself. This is Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld jam piece, and I feel like at this period, it's like their art kind of gels really well together. They were doing those football cards and stuff around this time as well, if you know anything about that. But I would really love to see this pin up here bigger and possibly, like, is it cropped? Are there more characters and stuff? Yeah, it's just a piece of art I haven't seen a lot of, and I thought looked really cool. Would have loved to have seen at least comic book page size, right? A lot bigger than just these ads here. So if anyone knows, has any information where I could look at this or find it, let me know. More McFarlane clever designs here for the panels and stuff. Always thought it was cool. Obviously, when you're dealing with more fantasy elements like the devil and stuff, you can go kind of crazy, try some different stuff. Depictions of hell, right? So the way he uses the hair here to create the panels, I think is really cool. Some of the McFarlane effects that don't quite work in other pieces of art work really well here with kind of the light reflection he's leaving open here and these kind of parallel lines that he just kind of stops doing. It's a little odd, like adds a bit here and a bit here. You'd think he'd do all throughout that shape, but yeah, it's a weird choice. But again, I think it works well here with the more kind of fantastic elements and the weird anatomy of the devil and all that. There's the checkerboard background, which I think McFarlane always did better than Rob Liefeld. I think it works better with Tom McFarlane's art. So we go into the B story. We get a little bit of what the cops are doing. These guys might seem kind of not super important early on in the series, but they will become kind of major players. I mean, they'll be around, every few issues, and then eventually become more major players within the main storyline with Spawn, which is the best way to do it. It's just McFarlane is so slow at doing it. Like, we're just in the first early issues, that's fine, but I do know that Spawn is a slow moving kind of storyline, right? At least as far as how far it moves forward from issue to issue. All right, so we got some sexual harassment at the office here with the boss, and Spawn threatens him and lets him know that if he, is going to have any issues and he hasn't paid alimony or child support, and he's going to start doing that, and if not, Spawn's going to come around and basically kick his ass, I guess is what he's saying here. I'm not going to go through the dialogue. This is another shot of Spawn that I copied. I think looks cool. This kind of side lip kind of deal I stole from him and did everywhere. The bottom lip kind of sticking out there. And Frank Miller does that, and McFarlane's not the only artist to do that, but I remember distinctly kind of swiping it from here and using it a lot. And still use it to this day. So he takes the file from that office, right? He's figured out he used to work there, so he's gotten some information on Wanda, that she lives in Queens, and oh no, it can't be. And he's found something out, right? So he wants to go meet her, but as we saw with issue 2, if you go back in the archives really far back, he can't turn back into his persona, his normal looking, Al Simmons persona. He's a black guy. He can only come back as this kind of white surfer dude, is kind of how he's described, right? Very kind of McFarlane drawing here. This could almost be Peter Parker from Spider-Man, right? And I got something about the way he does this. I think this is cool, where it's an easy way to just kind of finish off shoes and stuff, not have to add detail, and he just kind of does a hatching. For some reason, that just really works for me, and I think it's a cool kind of graphic trick to not have to draw the bottom of pants and shoes, because sometimes it takes a little more time to get the lines right and stuff and the angles, and this way he can just get through it real quick, do kind of a contour negative space drawing of the shoes. I mean, they're just pointy little feet, right? And I still think it works. Farlane was always good. This is a weird detail, but he was always good at like suburban backgrounds, I find. Maybe because he lived in a suburban area, you can just look out the window or something. You know, when he was drawing Amazing Spider-Man, there was more of that. When Spider-Man was not living in New York City. And this is another good example of it. The trees and the houses and stuff, I think he does that really well. I know it's a strange detail, but again, the backgrounds are important to create those evocative environments. So, and of course, she'd be in a super beautiful dress when he shows up, right? And he's practiced his speech, but basically he realized at this point that she's got a daughter, right? And now the memories come back, and he's like, well, we couldn't have a daughter, and it was my fault, basically, is what he's realized here. And he passes out on her porch and basically get woken up by her and Terry, who used to be his best friend, you know, before he died, before he was killed. So really the worst kind of situation for any kind of guy to realize that, okay, so your wife now has remarried your best friend and you couldn't have kids, and it was your fault because clearly with him, they did have a kid. So yeah, that's just about as... a lot of these motivations I understand come from Todd McFarlane directly, because at that point in his life, you know, he's got a wife, he's got a kid and stuff, and those are his concerns. So he's, you know, definitely working that into his storyline, which makes sense, right? That's, you know, the first rule of writing is write what you know. So I think this kind of concept of Spawn just being, you know, totally beat down by the situation is good storytelling wise, right? Now, as to how much McFarlane capitalizes on that, and you know, I don't know for sure throughout the rest of the storyline. We'll find out as we review the issues. But I do feel he stretches out some elements way too much from what I remember, and I'll be commenting on that as we move along, of course. So back in kind of the just dark, danky alleyways of New York, you know, I always liked when he would throw in this stuff. It's a bit cartoony, but the big no, like, I think it works really well. It's very evocative, dynamic. He adds this kind of, you know, design jizz or whatever you want to call it to give it effect. I think it works well. Cool shot of Spawn just being pissed. Some slight kind of even doing some, I guess, McFarlane's version of Kirby Crackle. I haven't seen him do much of that over his career. Maybe a little bit in Invasion, if I remember correctly. So it's nice to see every once in a while, you know. Everyone takes stuff from the king. I love Kirby Crackle. You know, I've done it before. And here's maybe the beginning of... I just want to point out, you know, throughout most of the first 3 issues, Spawn, you know, he's black, and the highlights have been like kind of grays and dark, and even very light blues that almost don't look blue, I guess. But here, the way they're doing it is, you know, eventually Spawn... kind of like what happened to Spider-Man and Batman. It seems to happen to all these characters where they have black in their costume. So, for example, Batman starts out as very black, you know, filled in with ink, and then slowly but surely the ink kind of disappears, and what originally are just blue highlights eventually leads to Batman's costume just being interpreted as being blue, right? Because there's so little shadow and black ink in the drawing of his costume. So that happens with Batman. Then with Spider-Man, same thing. Ditko originally, you know, the Spider-Man costume was basically red and black. And then slowly but surely, you got to add highlights, you know, to define form against the background and stuff. And they, of course, use the blue generally, with the black as the rule. And as slowly through time, through history, as Ditko moved on, and then John Romita was drawing Spider-Man, eventually the black part of the Spider-Man costume really became blue. And lost all that dark ink that was being used to render it. And Spawn had a bit of that too. You get a hint of it here, but in some of the issues later on, I do find that his costume just loses too much shadow and is colored blue and doesn't look so great. And they'll do that for a while. I think with like the later kind of McFarlane issues, maybe it starts in and around like 12, 13, somewhere around there. Anyways, I'll mention it as we go through the issues. But eventually they kind of correct that, or at least once McFarlane moves off and Capullo kind of hits a stride around issue 30, 31, 32, that starts to get lost, and they go back to the more of the shadow, you know, black kind of filled costume of Spawn. So Spawn's pissed off, and all of a sudden, as he's kind of kibitzing here, Violator shows up, right, and turns into his kind of demonic form here on this page. And Spawn, you know, he doesn't know much about the Violator or Hell or anything yet, right? So he's not quite sure, and he's just kind of threatening him. And of course, Violator does what he does best, at least up to this point, and reaches in, pulls out Spawn's heart, right? And I guess assumes he can just walk away from this guy here, right? Spawn. And of course, that can't be how it ends, so it's kind of revealed, I guess, on this double page splash that Spawn, I guess, doesn't need a heart to survive, right? So that'll be explained a little bit more next issue, maybe. And that's how they leave us on this kind of cliffhanger of Spawn not being dead, and us wondering, well, how's that possible if he, you know, has no heart? So we'll learn more about basically what Spawn's body is actually made up of. A rare choice here because, you know, over the continuation of the series, you know, it's pretty streamlined where when Spawn uses his powers, it's green. But kind of a rare example here of some orange, which I think is kind of cool. The coloring on this page is really awesome. So it definitely could work, but it did get kind of streamlined. It's just anytime he uses his powers, it's green. And I do think green maybe is the color that makes the most sense. They're using it here, his eyes, you know, all that. It's a choice. Just want to come back to this because you can see right away, like already from kind of his, this seems to be like his first kind of reboot, redraw of his old early 1980s version of Spawn that you can check out, you know, in the old, on the old internet and Google Images, you know. This is kind of his, I think, his first redraw and redesign 90s style. So this is where like he's got spikes, but it might not be the first because he says, see, I'm not sure if these seem to be spikes and not studs. You know, there's a few different early proto versions of Spawn out there. Definitely the design around the eyes has already changed by issue 1, but this is kind of the older one where it looks a bit like Spider-Man, basically. But I think most of the major elements were there. This was 1991, right? It's even dated. And I had forgotten about this, but definitely welcome. These early Image issues, you know, and Todd, since he was really the only guy who was really almost monthly or pretty much monthly back then. I remember I'd forgotten these early ads and pinups and stuff, and then looking over, just a wave of nostalgia hit me. Something I didn't see much of, Valentino being inked by McFarlane, and I would say at this point, you know, McFarlane kind of taken over Valentino. Even just with the look of this guy's face down here, I almost feel like he made this guy look like Jim Valentino. I've heard that Todd, not that he hates Jim Valentino, but like didn't think he necessarily belonged with him in the original kind of Image guys. But, you know, that's what happened anyways, so good on him for still kind of helping out, I guess, in inking this Shadowhawk pinup and helping give a bit of shine to Shadowhawk, no pun intended, with his shiny costume. It's one of the early ads and illustrations for Cyberforce, right? Where, again, if you look at this is Mark Silvestri inking himself, and very much looking like Mark Silvestri on X-Men and on Wolverine, I think. The coloring, not so much. The character design's way more extreme in 90s. But definitely, I would say the art is more akin to Wolverine than what it would become later on Cyberforce. You know, what will become this kind of Image standard and look, right? I've talked about how I find Mark Silvestri starts to look more and more like Jim Lee and kind of starts to lose what's special about his artwork. The slight grit and, you know, the great kind of body language and anatomy that he kind of gets from John Buscema, or at least his John Buscema inspiration. Yeah. Coloring is very dark. Don't know if that's Joe Scioto, probably. Seems like him. Yellows, oranges, and blues. And here's another one. It's a little blurry, actually. I don't know what happened with the printing here. But I always like this ad. And looking at it over again today, I realized a few things. First of all, Spartan had chains in this initial design. I think his design still changed a little bit from this. Proportion-wise, there's some weird stuff going on here. Because right now, you know, Maul seems to be pretty far, or at least furthest behind. Like, at least behind Warblade and Grifter, so he's probably pretty big and behind. And Voodoo's sitting in his hand and arm here, and she seems, you know, really proportionally much bigger than Zealot, like her head and stuff. It's kind of weird. So, you know, don't think something I'd noticed back in the day, and you wouldn't notice if you didn't really pay attention there. But yeah, there's some proportion issues there. But, you know, I don't think that stopped anyone from buying any Jim Lee comics. So it's more of a nitpick than anything else. these early ads for the Savage Dragon, Shadowhawk. I love it. Yeah, there's definitely like an exciting vibe back then. And any little piece of, you know, again, no internet. So any little ad that you saw in Wizard or in Spawn, or, you know, the newest issue of an Image comic you bought that you know, previewed something else or you'd never seen before, and something new that you didn't know about was coming out. It's just very exciting. It's easier to surprise the reader back then, definitely. So there you have it, guys. That's my review of Spawn #3 by Todd McFarlane. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, any little bit tidbits about this issue in the comments below. If you are subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much for still sticking around and checking out my videos. If you are watching videos but are not subscribed, please do so below. It takes very little time for you, and it really helps out the channel, helps get us out there to other people who might be interested in the same subject matter that we are. Basically, that's comic books. So thank you, everyone, for watching, and have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.